right. Well, thanks so much for coming in. Really appreciate you being here on the first snowy day of this winter. So thanks for making the trip. And I know some of you came pretty far. So really hope you get some value out of today. I'll just kind of go through what I plan to, and then at the end, if you have any questions or if there's anything you want to talk about, I'm a pretty much open book. So hope to take you through this. And at the end, when you fill out those surveys, that is for a door prize. So I've got a couple books up here that we'll be raffling off. So please, when we're done here, complete the survey before you leave, and we'll do that as well. So just kind of to get an idea of the room, raise your hand if you are already doing some type of investment real estate of some nature. Either you're doing flipping or buy and hold, or okay. So it gives me a pretty good idea, about a fourth of the room. And then I know we have a number of real estate agents here. Raise your hand if you have a real estate license in the state of Wisconsin. Yeah, I knew it was quite a few, so a little bit over half. So some people with knowledge, so that makes me feel like whenever I see like certain names show up on a list, I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to really make sure I'm bringing good value to this. So I hope I have something that everybody, whether you're beginner or a little more advanced, can take away. So the name of the course is, if you want to call it that, is 10 years to $10,000 an hour. It's what I kind of came up, and I'll kind of get to why I called it that a little bit later. But this is the third in the series. So the first one, there was no subtitle. The second one was a deal by deal analysis. We kind of dove into those deals, and I kind of showed how I was breaking those down, and ultimately what I was thinking about at the time I was making that purchase. Obviously, early on, I was a rookie investor, so I didn't really necessarily know what I should be looking for. And then as the years went on, just kind of how I got a little bit more, I got a little bit more focused on what I was doing. So I always kick this off with the less fun part here. So the disclaimer. So I'm a licensed agent who's bought and sold investment property, both before and after getting my license. I'm going to share some of those experiences. I am not a legal professional, so I can't give legal advice. If you need legal advice, you need to consult an attorney. I'm also not an accountant, so if you need accounting advice, please consult a CPA. And of course, I'm not a financial advisor. So if you need somebody to consult you with your retirement or those types of things, please consult someone there. Okay, so then the other disclaimer that I always talk about is how real estate is a get rich slow game. Thus the title 10 years to $10,000 an hour, not 1 year or 1 minute. That there is a process to it, but the benefits are not immediate. It usually is some type of snowball effect, and it takes time for that to happen. I don't know if these batteries are any better. Yeah, we might have to go without the mic, perhaps. I'll do the best I can. Okay, so why am I doing this? Investment real estate changed my life. So by teaching people more about it, it's kind of my way to get back. My hope is to help people either get started, maybe convince them to take that initial jump, or to accelerate their progress. Maybe you've already started. And so by supporting you, I'm supporting the causes that are important in your life. Personally, my real estate investments, other than eventually funding my retirement, they also currently fund a scholarship at the high school that I still coach at. I taught in the Verona School District for 16 years prior to doing real estate, and so we've given close to $25,000 in scholarship money so far, and the plan is to keep that going every year, and eventually grow the scholarship so that we can give a full scholarship every year. So primary goals, figure out what your big why is. If you don't have a big why, I feel that most people, like, if you're just like, oh, it'd be nice to have a little side cash, or, oh, it'd be nice to, you're not going to jump for it. But if you are like, hey, I want to have the financial freedom that I've got enough flexibility that I'll never miss my child's soccer, basketball, or hockey games, or that I'm going to be there for all the important events of their life, that's going to be the thing that's going to fuel you to actually move forward. On the flip side, you should know your freedom number. I talked to some investors who've been doing this longer than I have, and they have way more property than I do. They have, in my opinion, like a crazy amount of annual, like monthly or annual cash flow. And they just keep going. And I'm just like, man, what's the point in which you're going to stop? And they haven't even considered it. They haven't even thought of it. So it's like, you do have to consider, where's the point in which I'm going to stop, or you'll always be doing it. And the whole goal is for freedom. So you have to determine what the finish line looks like for you. And that can look very different for you than somebody else. Okay. So before we really get into it, one of the keys is you really got to know your dollar per hour. And so I Googled, what does an average college grad make? $55,000 a year. So let's divide that by 48 weeks, assuming that they take 4 weeks vacation and are working 40 hours a week, $29 an hour. So then I'm like, okay, let's take someone who makes considerably more than that. Most people would say if you're making $200,000 or more a year, you're a pretty high income earner. Using the same scale, 48 weeks, 40 hours a week, $104 an hour. So what does that, how does that compare to being a real estate investor? So this was literally my path. And I talk much more about it in the first one. So if you weren't here for the first one, I've filmed all of these and they're all on YouTube. So afterwards, if you're like, hey, I wasn't here for the first one and I want to hear more about it, I'll give you the link and you can get all the details. Essentially, when I was at one rental property, I was at $7,000 cash flow for the year, 40 hours of work for the year, so 3 hours a month, and $175 an hour. So I'm already at $175 an hour. I'm already beyond my dollar per hour is already better than a high income earner. Someone that makes $200,000 a year. Now the problem is my total income is only $7,000, so obviously not enough to live on. So then when I got up to two, I did a 1031 exchange. I got up to 2 properties, and then you can just kind of see the progress. Now I'm up to $250 an hour. Now I get a couple more properties. Now I'm up to $266 an hour. Now this one's the hypothetical, because what actually happened is I hired a property manager. But had I not hired a property manager and did this all myself, but you can see like the dollar per hour, it's plateauing as I get more properties, where all of a sudden it really starts to get to the next level is when you hire a property manager. So that's when I went from $320 an hour up to $6,000 an hour. And then eventually, and this is just kind of rough math, once you're at 40 financed units or 20 units with no financing, you're probably at around $120,000 a year, 12 hours a year, $10,000 an hour. Thus, that's how I came up with the class. And that's about where I was at the time that I started doing this a year ago. So homeowner versus the real estate investor. So what I go into this is, if you are a homeowner, you are actually already a real estate investor. You just don't know it yet. As a homeowner, you are paying down your principal, which is acting like forced savings. So it's not like, your monthly mortgage payment, not all of that is going to your lender. Some of it's going to your lender and some of it is essentially going back to you in the form of equity. So it's almost like putting money in the piggy bank. Slow, steady equity gain. And then of course, over time, your home values go up over time. And of course, if you update it or improve it, it's going to go up in value as well. So, you're already a real estate investor on a certain level. Where you really take it to the next level is when you're actually a real estate investor, because now the tenants are paying your principal, not you. And the equity improvement is over time and with rent improvements, which I talked about a lot in the second video series. So again, you can kind of look into that. I'll talk a little bit about that today too. And then of course, cash flow is achieved when the rent that you are receiving is more than the mortgage, taxes, and other expenses with the property. So the rules, I've always said when I'm working with a first-time investor, I'm always saying we have to accomplish two things. First, the property must cash flow or have the potential to cash flow even after you hire property management. Because you might say, okay, I'm going to manage it myself. But what if you get 6 months, 12 months into it and you decide, I hate doing this. Like, I don't like managing the property. Well, now you got to hire a property manager. If that puts you into negative cash flow, then that's not a good situation to be in. Okay, so it should cash flow even after you hire property management. Second, there can't be anything so wrong with the property that you quit, give up, or forced to sell in the first 1 to 2 years. And the reason why you have to make it beyond that is once you make it past the 2-year mark, the likelihood of you being able to sell it and cut your losses and take a, potentially take a gain, but take a break even or take a minimal loss is in your favor. So if you're looking at it and you're feeling like, whoa, this is going to be very overwhelming, it might not be a good idea for that be your first purchase. Now, how somebody's going to look at it on their first purchase versus somebody looking at on their 10th purchase is very different. So, everybody's a little bit different with that. We'll talk a little bit about that too. So I've talked about this in all of the series, but I'll touch on it. The investor is where we want to be. We want to love the opportunity and buy the right thing. We actually put some thought behind it and, actually, do some level of analyzing. And then if it fits the criteria, we're going to go see it. If we like it, we're going to make an offer. Pretty much what I tell my investor clients is if it makes sense on a spreadsheet, we can now see it. We now have permission to go see it. If we see it and it's about what we were expecting or better than what we were expecting, we're going to write an offer. If it's worse than we were expecting, like maybe they took photos of all the good rooms and now that we're getting into, we're like, oh, like, maybe it's a 4-unit building and one of the units looks awesome and you're like looking at that and you look at the other 3 and you're like, oh boy, this is going to be a lot of work. Okay, now maybe we're moving on. The collector loves ownership and buys something. The speculator loves the action, buys anything, and the observer just loves the idea but never buys. And that's, I would say, out of the people I meet, I would say the majority are in that category, unfortunately. They like the idea of it. They'll meet with me. They'll start, contemplating it, but then they just don't take that next step. What I will say is I've worked with collectors and I've worked with speculators, and usually I'm working with investors. The collectors and the speculators still usually make money. Sometimes they make as much money as the investors, but there's luck involved. So at least if someone's a collector or speculator, at least they're in the game and they got a shot. There's a little bit more risk involved with those types of investors, but I always tell people, like, you just don't want to be an observer. You got to take some type of action. So this is my journey in the second one of these sessions I did. I talked more in depth about these. what I'm trying to just demonstrate here is that I've purchased in a variety of types of markets. My first one was 2011. I did my 1031 exchange in 2015. Then I bought in 2016, 17, 2020, 2021, and this year. I bought everything from a single family house to, I have 2 8-unit apartments. So I've got a variety. I don't own any like 20-unit apartment buildings. In total, I have, currently I have 8 different buildings and 31 units on my portfolio. So I just really show that just to show that, hey, I've done a lot of different purchases in different types of markets and different types of properties. Okay, so now we're getting into the topic of today, which, what are challenging times? Well, in 2008 to 2012, people were telling everybody, hey, properties are losing value every year. Don't buy now. When I bought that first property in 2011, I bought and for those of you that pay attention to the real estate market in Madison, I bought a 4-bed, 2-bath, single family house with no garage across the street from St. Mary's Hospital, Violet's neighborhood. It was listed for $255. They price reduced to $245, and I negotiated a sale of $210. So, like, think about what the time was like, and people were still telling me, you're nuts. What are you doing? Don't buy this property. It's losing value every year. That was the message of during that time. So, so I would say that was a challenging time. 2013 to 2017, now the market's starting to pick up. You're starting to see gradual increases, but people are like, oh, you missed your window. Home values are going up. Just wait for the next crash. Just wait for the next crash. It's coming. Then you can go ahead and buy. By 2018, 2019, now things have been good for almost a full decade. So now, oh, okay, the market correction's for sure coming now. Don't buy, just wait for it to decline. It was kind of the same messaging. In 2020, that's when, COVID, stay at home, all of a sudden, some people are not paying their rents. Oh gosh, don't buy now. Like, some people aren't paying their rents. This is a terrible time to buy. And then by 2021, prices have gone up so much. Just wait for the prices to come down. They can't keep doing this, So, okay. So now there's always a flip side. So on the flip side, 2008 to 2012, hey, properties are at discount prices that we might never see again. I bet everybody in this room, if they had, if I could buy a 4-bed, 2-bath in the Violet's neighborhood. Oh, I forgot to mention, it was a flip. So brand new everything, totally gutted down to the studs. The only thing that was still old-ish was the furnace was 10 years old. Other than that, everything else was brand new. The central AC unit had been replaced. They refinished the floors. They gutted to the studs, so it was new plumbing, new electrical, no knob and tube or anything like that. So, anyways,
You had one tenant that whole time?
I owned that for like 4 years, and I just had, college students. And as soon as that group said they're not coming back, I just said, okay, well, boy, it looks like all the other 4-bedrooms are renting for about $2,000 a month, but mine's got 2 bathrooms, and most of the other ones only have 1. And mine's like pretty updated. I think I can, let me try for $2,200 a month, see what happens. Boom. Now all of a sudden I'm at $9,000, yeah, so that worked out pretty good. So, okay, so 2013 to 2017, prices are still low and there's great financing options available. I got a crazy loan offer. I mean, I don't know if they still offer this one, but they had this, lenders wanted your business. They were trying to pick up some momentum. So they're offering things that they typically, weren't offering before the housing crash. Because I bought my first house in 2004, and it was just kind of like, hey, do you want a 30-year fixed or do you want a 15-year fixed? Now all of a sudden they're like, hey, we've got all these different options. I had the 777 loan. So interest rates at that time, I think they were like in the mid 4s. And when you buy or rent a property with conventional financing, they put riders on, because like, oh, so you got 4.5. Oh, you're not gonna live in it though. Okay, we're gonna add a little bit to it. You're gonna rent it out. Okay, we're gonna add on to that a little bit. So I think I would have probably been at around 5 or maybe 5.25 for my interest rate. They were offering a super aggressive 7, so it was a 7-year fixed at 3. And then the next 7 years, it would go up or, it could go up, it could go down. Worst case scenario though was it would go up by 2%. So I'd be up at 5%. And then the same thing for the last 7 years. So I'm like, okay, so, and then I just looked at how much more equity I would have. So the monthly payment was a little bit more. But I'm like, by the end of 7 years, I'm going to have, now I'm purchasing 2 properties. I'm going to have $50,000 more equity per property in 7 years. And just for like $90 more a month, like to me, this makes a lot of sense. So great financing options were available during that time. And then 2018 to 2019, like, hey, now we've got a track record of home prices seem to be going up pretty steadily. There was no reason to think that it was not going to continue to happen. And then 2020, tenants not paying are motivating sellers, and the interest rate dropped. That was the year that I remember I was in the process of purchasing my first 8-unit, and I locked the rate. So I was using commercial financing. And I'm trying to remember what my rate was. I think I was like around, like, I think I was like 4 high, might have been 5. So maybe like 4.75. And then like when it all just started to drop, it was like, cause I closed like the first week of the pandemic. And I just said, hey, can I have a better rate? Like, I see what they're doing, they went back and said, yeah, we'll give you a 4.25. And I was like, awesome. So I got like 0.5% off just for making a phone call and asking. And then less than a year later, I refinanced down to like a 3.25, so it was just crazy. So, so tenants not paying or motivating sellers. That's ultimately how I made that second purchase in 2020. I don't think that was affecting that particular property. I think those tenants were paying, but I think a lot, because there was fewer buyers, I was able to get such a good deal on that one. So it was a 2-unit by East High School. It had a lot of problems, but I got a 2-unit by East High School, both 2-bed, 1-bath for $200,000 in 2020. This isn't 2011. So, and then 2021, while one group's saying, hey, the prices are too high, wait for them to come down. Hey, the interest rates are at record lows, and the rents are going up really quick. So what the reason I show this is, and I'll kind of show on my next slide, the reasons not to buy are clear and right in front of us. Those are the ones that get in the headlines. Those are the ones that everybody's saying. The reasons not to buy are often not clear until a year or two later. So if you were thinking, like, especially after the year we just had, if you could go back in time and buy an investment property last year at the interest rates we had last year, wouldn't you do it? And if you could go back 2 years, wouldn't you buy at the low interest rates of 2020? And on top of it, there were some motivated sellers who were like, oh my God, my tenants aren't paying, and they hit the panic button and just throw their house on the market, and they're willing to take a discount, but because of this is why so many people keep waiting to take action. They're so focused on what's happening right now, in the fear, the fear of what they're being told, than, what are the reasons to keep purchasing. Okay, so where are we at right now? I would say, we're at one of the more challenging that I've experienced, which is why coming into this, I've actually had to give a lot of thought to like, okay, you know, what do I need to look for, which is actually part of the reason in preparation for this. You know, I got a 4-unit under contract and closed on it. I've helped a couple other clients, and I'll kind of go through that here in a little bit and show you what that looks like. So 2022, 2023, the interest rates are high, property values are high. Some are forecasting a market correction for next year, and lenders are tightening up what they're willing to do for borrowers. And what I mean for that, if you, for those of you that are actively investing, I mean, I'll give you an example that I heard about this off-market 3-unit in downtown, a couple blocks away from the Capitol. Seller wants like low 500s, which I'm like, oh, that's crazy. That's like a really good price for a 3-unit. I just kind of quick do the math. It's not like awesome cash flow, but most stuff in downtown doesn't cash flow at a 20% down. Most people will pay more of a down payment so that it will cash flow. So I'm like, okay, well, this isn't a lucrative amount, not enough to really, where I'm really excited is like, I just feel like I'm getting a good price on this. I toss it to my lender and say, hey, you know, what do you think? I don't know, Joff, I think, yeah, I think you'd have to put at least 30% down on this for us to do this one. And I'm like, what? And like, it's like, I just think of all the money that they're lending me right now. And it's not like I'm a first-time investor, and they still, a property that I could literally purchase and sell to somebody else. And even after closing costs, commission, and whatnot, probably still make like 50K in the next 6 months. They didn't want to do that. They didn't want to do that deal. Well, unless I put more money down, which then it just made it like, okay, well, now I've got 50% more money held up for the next 6 months in order to make it. Is this still worth it? And, you know, not yet, but maybe. Still thinking about that one. So 2022, 2023, you know, we won't know for certain, like I said, for 1 to 2 years from now. The high interest rates and fear is eliminating most of the competition. Properties that cash flow now will cash flow even more in 1 to 3 years when the rates go back down. Because I think almost every person I've talked to that's in lending thinks we're going to peak like spring of next year, and we're going to stay at peak for most of next year. And then it's going to start coming down. So when it does come down, well, what's that going to look like? So if you can kind of get through this storm. And then fear is motivating some sellers. I've seen sellers like I think it was the month of July. I remember so many properties hitting the MLS in the multifamily space. I was just like, and I don't know if you were noticing the same things. I know we got a lot of agents here, but I remember there were some weeks where there'd be double-digit amount of multifamilies hitting the market in Dane County in a week. And I was like, I can't remember this ever happening. And so now it's not nearly as much, but I think the sellers that are putting their house on the market now, like have, you know, are kind of like, well, I know I probably missed the peak window. I'm willing to take a little bit less. And yeah, and some think it's going to keep going down. So fear is motivating some sellers, and it's affecting the expectations of list agents. I've had that where, you know, there's an off-market property. 12 months ago, there's an off-market rental property, and I thought it was a pretty good deal. I'm telling my buyer, hey, you know, if you go 20, 30K above ask and with good terms, we can maybe get this under contract before it even hits the market. Now, I did one somewhat recently where we just went at ask, and our terms weren't, I mean, our terms were pretty good, but I didn't think they were, you know, crazy good. Definitely not as good as what I was doing 6 months ago. So anyway, I'm going to actually kick out of here and kind of show you what I'm talking about. All right. So can you guys see this okay? So this is the spreadsheet I use when I'm working with clients. Some people like to use way more robust spreadsheets than this. I keep it pretty simple. Let's kind of run down. I've got the property, then the asking price, how many units, the unit details, city assessment, current rent, and then eventually, if you do a second line, it's like projected rent. So then it auto populates what the annual rent is or will be, vacancy, projected first year expenses, because that in combination with the down payment is how much you're investing. The down payment, the monthly payment based on the down payment, the amortization and the interest rate. Now you plug in your expenses, property tax, insurance, and annual maintenance, property management, utilities, lawn and snow, that kind of stuff. And then, it just kind of figures out like, what's the cash flow after property management? What's it if you self-manage? What's the cash on cash on those two? And then just rent, gross rent multiplier per door. If you won the lottery, paid it all off, what would it be? And then cap rate. So that's how I break it down. So let's just focus on this here. Cash flow after property management. Remember, we still have the same rules. It's got a cash flow, even though, even if you do plan to self-manage, it's got a cash flow with property management. And actually at the time we first started looking, the interest rate, and this is with a 25-year amortization because he's doing a commercial finance. So for those of you that don't know, typically if you finance conventionally, you're going to get a 30-year fixed. But if you finance commercially, you'll get a little bit better rate, sometimes a lot better rate. But it's going to be amortized over 25 years, and you only keep that rate for 5 years. So it's a 5-year rate lock. Although there's other options, there's flexibility. You could ask for a 7 or whatever. There's other options. But anyways, so even at 5.5, look at like nothing cash flows. Like, oh, here's one that finally does. As on Milwaukee Street, for whatever reason, he decided not to pursue that one, but nothing. Okay, here's one that just barely cash flows. So it was vacant. That's why that negative number is so big, So, and then at one point, so at a certain point in this process, now it goes up to 6. And he's just like, hey, what were you getting? He's like, what your commercial loans? He's like, and I know I'm not talking peak. He's like, what do you generally get on these? And I said, not counting 2020 or 2021, I usually was getting 4 to 4.5. So he would every once in a while just plug in, 4.5. And he's like, oh, now like almost everything cash flows, So he's like, oh, I said, well, yeah, but like, if it was that low, it'd be more competitive. So anyway, so at 6%, if you look down this list, you see a lot of negative numbers. And then finally, talking about financing tightening up, this was a 4-unit that actually was listed here in our office. He did plan to offer on it. And then the lender was like, nah, we just, unless you're willing to put 30 or 35% down, we're not willing to do this. And he's just like, oh, well then, like that, I don't want to invest that much for this one. That just makes less sense for me. So he bailed out of that one. So ultimately, this is the one that we got under contract. It's on Raymond Road. It's a duplex. We put an offer sight unseen. Obviously, we had to walk through contingency, so still got to tour the property, and then still did an inspection. Still negotiated after inspection. And this worked out pretty good. So basically, if you look at this one, based on the current rents, it was going to negatively cash flow. One of the units was actually vacant, so we put in the price in which we could get like a quick tenant in. So it's not like full, but we'd probably just do like a 6-month lease, get somebody in on like a discounted rate. So this is kind of what it's going to look like for his first 6 months, which isn't bad. That's losing about $200 a month. But then he ran really conservative numbers and said, okay, what if I can get it up to 1,600 aside? Which I think is pretty conservative considering, where it's at, and the type of building it is. So that gets it, that puts it to positive cash flow. So that's like okay, now we can consider this. And then he put it up to the rents that he's actually targeting. Now to get that target, you'll see that he's putting more into the property in year one. So he's gonna do some updates here and there. They did some, so some of the work's already been done, but he's gonna do a little bit more, improve the property. And so now it's up to a 6,000 a year cash flow. So, when I'm helping people, I think a lot of people when they first start, like they want to get some kind of home run deal. And the reality is when I'm helping someone for the first time, I'm typically just trying to help them get a base hit like this. But a base hit not only gets you in the game, but it's going to make you pretty decent money. So I'm just looking at the first 5 years that he's at this 6% interest rate. And we were lucky we got in because literally 2 weeks after that, because 1 week after that is when I went under contract on my 4 unit. And then 1 week after that, so 2 weeks after we went under contract here, we're working with the same lender. He said, hey, we're at 7% now, just like that, just boom. And that is one of the other differences between commercial financing versus conventional. Conventional, it's just wiggling up and down every day. You never know what to expect. But with commercial, I mean, it's like some people meet in a room and they decide what it's going to be for the next 1 to 4 weeks. And so sometimes it can go up pretty dramatically, which it did, a full percent between 1 week to the next. Okay, so in the first 5 years, I just kind of did the math. He's going to have over $30,000 in principal pay down in the first 5 years. He's going to cash flow over $30,000 in the first 5 years. And if you just factor in, because as soon as he puts $20,000 into the property, he's already immediately made it worth more. But I made it really conservative here. Said, okay, that's not going to improve the property at all. And it's only going up 3% per year. That's almost $50K in appreciation. So here it is, a base hit, and in 5 years, it'll be $100K further than he is. And this isn't like a, home run deal here. I mean, this is just a nice, solid, safe deal. He's unlikely to lose money on this. He's very likely to make money on this. So yeah. So anyways, just kind of showing like you don't have to crush it, but you do have to just keep looking. Out of all these properties, it shows how many we considered. We only saw 3 of those and we wrote offers on 2 of them. And like I said, the only reason he didn't write on that 4 unit was the lender didn't like that deal as much as we did. So anyways, in the grand scheme of things, this one's going to work out better for him anyways. So it's okay. All right. Okay, so change the focus. So the rules stay the same. You must cash flow by the next rent cycle. I've purchased properties in the past that I knew I've actually the one that I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. I knew it was under rented and I knew it would be negative cash flow. But you are potentially, or if you're working with the client, you're potentially making them the distressed seller if you are helping them purchase a place that doesn't positively cash flow. And right now in the current market, the likelihood of the lender allowing for them to go into a negative cash flow position is slim. It's just not very likely. They want to see that it has an opportunity. And then again, the same thing, there can't be anything so wrong with it that you will quit, give up, or be forced to sell in the first 1 to 2 years. So the new rules, less focus on the cash flow, more focus on building equity. Obviously you have to stay in your comfort zone. What's going to be uncomfortable for one person might be really comfortable for me. In the end, can you improve the rents, the property, or both? And if you do want turnkey, be prepared to put a larger down payment. You're going to need 25 to 35% down if you want the turnkey type of property. Okay. Let me see here. I'm going to flip back to. So I'm going to use my purchase as an example. So I purchased a 4-unit on East Harriet Street. Basically, as most agents do, I'm frequently networking for, sellers in general, but particularly multifamily space. If I'm always asking like, okay, do you know someone who needs to, has a need to sell, has a need to buy, that I can help. In this case, my plumber said, hey, I got word that this person down the street from me is selling his 4-unit. So I'm like, okay, well, let's, so in time I got connected to the seller directly, essentially selling it for their father who had passed away, who had managed it literally up until like, just the last year. And so I'll kind of take you through this one. When I talked to them, they said they were under contract with somebody at like 550-ish. And then when the interest rates jumped, they bailed out, and they kind of psychologically, okay, we're definitely not going to get 550. They were talking with an agent. I don't know what the agent was telling them for the list price, but my guess is they were telling them around 500. Because when I approached them and said, hey, if I were to purchase this, what would you want if there was, no commission involved? And they said upper 4s would be good. So I kind of presented one offer where, okay, I'll give you, 480 with, but I'll want, it's going to be financed. It's going to close in 35 days. It's going to have an inspection. I'm going to have an appraisal contingency, yada, yada, yada. And they, or I'll give you this lower amount, like cash, close in 2 weeks, no contingencies other than I need to walk through the property just to make sure it's as you described. And so they negotiated on the second offer. They wanted the cleaner offer and the quicker close. And so we went back and forth on that. And ultimately we landed at 465. So your average consumer is going to look at this 465 and they're going to say, okay, the rent's here and here's your expenses and yada, yada, yada. Hey, this loses money. Well, I'm not going to do this. Okay. Now your average investor is going to start looking at, okay, well, boy, I can get those rents up to $1,000 a month. And now it's starting to look like this. Okay, 5,000 a year. Maybe I buy it, maybe I don't. My cash on cash is, 4%. They may or may not buy that at 465. So what I'm looking to do though is how can I improve the property so that I can command the top of the market rents for what it is. So now you see year one expenses, $50,000. With that, I'm going to get the rents up from $1,000 because that's probably market if I just didn't do anything. So where's the 50,000? So it's a brick 4-square. So for those that don't know, it's, like 2 units, second floor, 2 units, first floor. It's encapsulated in a brick building that looks like a brick. So they currently, I assumed I was going to have some expense for the heat. I assumed it would have like a boiler that serves the whole building, but actually no, it had 4 furnace units. So I'm just like, okay, central AC. My property manager said the biggest thing you can do to the inside of these to help me market this to make it more rentable and increase the rent is add dishwashers. So it's like, okay, well, we'll add dishwashers. Another bonus, 2 of the 4 kitchens were already renovated. So don't even have to do anything with those 2 kitchens other than now remove a set of cabinets so we can get a dishwasher in. That's already been done for us. Now we'll do the same thing in the other 2. So collectively between the two kitchens and there was one smoker, so there'll be some smoke remediation in that unit. So between everything collectively, I'm targeting a 50K improvement budget. And with that, I feel pretty good about getting that 1,200 rent. And so with that, okay, now we're talking, now we're over 10K for a cash flow. Return on investment 8.3, which still might not be super intriguing to somebody, but this is where I got in the mode. This is like where preparing for this helped me, because I was like, with the interest rate being so high, because I used to have, so full disclosure, my do I buy it or do I not buy it mark was a 15% cash on cash. That's when I either bought it, and that was far higher than most of the clients I worked with. I had most of my clients were happy with 5% or 8%, but for me, it's like, no, it's got to be 15%. Well, no, nothing's gonna hit that mark anymore, so how should I be looking at this? Okay, so obviously this deal to me is a good one because I've got three options. One, I can take the improved cash flow, which is already showed here. I mean, obviously I take it from a negative cash flow to a positive cash flow to a very positive cash flow. So that's one way to look at it. The second is, sell for profit. Okay, so now we know, as we've talked about before, people are willing to pay more than 20% down to make something cash flow if it's turnkey. So if I put that money in and I'm actually getting, $4,800 a month for the building, and and so let's just plug in some numbers now. So let's just say, so I got in at 6% interest. Let's say it's at 8%. And so this is at negative cash flow, but barely. Maybe they'll run their numbers a little bit different, so on paper it looks like a break even. Well, that's at 600. That's at 600,000. So if they're putting 25% down, 600,000, potentially I could sell that. So subtract closing costs, subtract the rehab budget, 55K profit off of my initial investment of 143. 143 is the down payment plus the rehab costs. That's the 38.5% ROI. That's pretty good, so that's not bad. And I can either, with that, I can either 1031 exchange, or I could just take the money and run. The other option is the BRRRR method. So for those that don't know, the BRRRR method is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. So basically it's a way of like, put a bunch of money into a place and then see how much you can pull back out and still own the property and still get all the benefits of owning the property. So, okay. So again, improved, well, I was actually going to run the numbers too. Like, okay, let's say, this is like a best case scenario. Let's say somebody's like, oh, I love this property. I'm willing to pay $650. I'm going to go, I don't know, 30 or 35% down to make it cash flow, and whatever. So, okay. So what if I don't do that? What if I just BRRRR it? So now, and I can try it at some different numbers. Actually, I think 600. Let's go with 600,000. So let's say I've done all this work. I have the bank come back out. Hey, take a look at it now. What do you think it's worth now? And let's say it appraises. The bank's like, hey, you know what? You did a lot of stuff. You got the rents up. Looks a lot better. 600,000. Okay. Well, now remember, I had 50K of rehab costs, but all things considered, even after the initial down payment, I'm getting all of that back minus 35,000. I'm only keeping 35K in the deal. I still own the property. Now, obviously, I probably, that's at 35%. So let's say 20%. Oh, no. No, I think I had it. I was like, why is it? I played around with these numbers, but this is what I do. Like, I'm just always like kind of playing around. So let's just assume it's currently the rate's at 7, the interest rate at my lender 7%. Obviously, it could go up. But the hope is by next fall, it's equal or better than what it currently is. So let's say next fall, I've got the rent stabilized at a higher price. I'm like, hey, I want to burr this thing. The appraisal comes in at 600. Now I can pull $480,000 out. Remember, the purchase price was for 465. So I get the 465 back plus 15K. However, I did have 50K in rehab costs. So I'm really in it for 35K. So if you base off the 35K, now here's the ROI numbers, which aren't that lucrative, but now I've literally got most of my money back, which I can use to purchase something else. And it'll still keep appreciating. The tenants are paying down my principal. So there's some good options with this one. So any questions on this one before I move on to the next?
Yeah, I don't really understand the option two.
Option two is just simply sell it, either trade up or just sell it for profit. So that's saying, okay, let's say, so 600,000. So I think that's the realistic price after everything's all done. But, closing costs, rehab, and I get a closing cost discount because I'm an agent, so I'm only paying a buyer's agent, not both. Rehab costs, so that's my proceeds. The profit is just the original price minus the proceeds. Yeah, I'm not a spreadsheet genius, so did I screw something up? And some of this I did late last night, and some of this I did earlier today. So if something's off, just let me know. But that was basically it. Hey, have a 6-month salary of 55K for simply reselling it. Okay.
With the BRRRR method, you just have without going through the process, how do you know, or how does the lender know kind of where they're coming in at?
You don't. I mean, that's where you're taking the risk. And one of these I'm going to just talk about BRRRR strictly. That might be the next one that I'll do like late February or early March, because I just think the BRRRR is so intriguing. And I did one summer of 2020 with that 2-unit, but I mean, I got a really good price, and it wasn't that long after I purchased it that the market really started taking off. So the combination of those two, a perfect BRRRR is when everything that you invested into it, you pull it back out. So the total investment, after all so on that one in particular, like I purchased it at 200, put 30K in. So a 285 appraisal means the 80% that I pull out is the 230. But the appraisal came in at 315. So I actually got the 230 back plus an additional 15K, maybe it's 18K, something like that. And then I just reinvested most of that back into the property too. So the BRRRR is really, really intriguing. But usually it's not a perfect BRRRR. Usually, you're leaving some money in the deal. And in this case, at 600,000, I'm leaving some money in the deal. Now, let's say the appraisal, best case scenario, comes in at 650 after I'm done with everything. Well, I kept negative. Now I have all my money back plus an additional 5K. So that's like an infinite ROI, and I still own the property. The tenants are still paying principal, and the property is still appreciating. So that's what I like about that one so much. Okay, so creative financing. So, do you have, if you were to do a HELOC, so like this is if you're already a homeowner and you've got a lot of equity in your property, if you did a HELOC, could you get a lower payment on by taking income out of your current, or taking, I should say income, but I should say equity out of your current house, rather than, and then of course, seller financing. I mean, it's pretty rare you can find these opportunities. Seller financing only works, at least from my understanding, if the property owner owns the property outright, or they're so close to having it paid off that whatever initial down payment that you're making would pay the rest of the loan off. Now essentially they can become the lender for you. It has to be the right combination, because what I understand from my real estate attorney, there is some risk for both sides in those types of transactions, but it's a potential win-win if you have the right buyer and the right seller. So it's worth mentioning that it's an option with creative financing. So I'm going to kind of go into that. So here's a client I'm currently working with, and just some off-market deals that I heard about that I kind of tossed his way. We made an offer on this one. So he plans to put 25% down. He was quoted at 7.5% interest rate, although it was ticking up as we were searching. So it might've been like 7.75. Remember, the interest rate was at 7 at the time, but you got the riders, so they're going to add on some extra. I actually thought 7.5 was actually pretty reasonable for him. So he does plan to manage himself, but it's got to meet the rule. It's got to cash flow after management. So what we were initially told was this: 640 was the price that they wanted, and here's what the rents are, and then here's what we thought the rents could be. So if you just look at these two rows, I mean, it's just a large house. It's a 7-bed, 2-bath, large house in the Vilas neighborhood. So you look at all the numbers, and negatively cash flows, but could positively cash flow based off of where we think things are going. But it got worse. The seller actually wanted more money. And I actually got this flipped. He was actually getting lower rents than advertised. He was telling us what the rents were for the next rent cycle. So for those of you not familiar with how renting in downtown Madison works, students move in mid-August, and by mid-September, the landlord's saying, hey, do you want to renew for next year? And if not, I'm going to start showing your place. And typically, a lot of the leases are signed before Thanksgiving. At least when I had a property down there, I always wanted my leases signed before Thanksgiving. So anyways, so it would be the rest of the lease term with just this much rent per month. Then second year, this much rent per month. And finally, by year 3, we'd have this month. So when we ran the numbers, it was like, oh, this is this is kind of soul crushing. So we ended up backing out. Well, we never got an offer accepted. So I don't know, it was just some bad communication there. So then we found out about this different 2-unit in Vilas that was off market. And this one was intriguing because we're like, hey, this is actually below the city assessed by quite a bit. City assessor has it at about 580. And they're looking for 500. And so what's nice about this is the property taxes are actually likely to come down. So you'll actually have a little bit less expense on the property tax side, which is rare. But yeah, we ran the numbers on this, and it's just severely under rented, has a ton of parking, which is valuable in that area because you can, it has 3 garage spots and additionally enough spots that 6 other people could, park. You have like kind of based on how I viewed it, you have like a tandem, but like in a way that you can just essentially just get out of there. And then 4 other people could just be parked in regular. And so, yeah, so we were just like, okay, well, if you actually start charging market rate for this parking and you charge market rate for this is a number, and this is actually being conservative. I think you might be able to do better than that. So we looked at these numbers and we were like, okay, it's going to lose a lot of money in the first year, but by year 2, it will positively cash flow. Now, here's the thing that's not on here is the bonus money. You have to have that much parking and you're in Vilas and you're walkable to Camp Randall. If you put on the leases, tenants must get out of the parking lot by 7 a.m. on Badger Saturdays. You have 7 home games per year where you can charge money for the spots. So this is not on here, but we just did, when we were there at the property, we were actually counting, okay, because you can comfortably get 9 people parked comfortably, and they can come and go as they want. Or if you stack it and use the lawn, we're like 20 spots. So that'd be like $1,000 per weekend for 7 weekends. So would you want to do that? He doesn't really want to. So now you have to find someone to do it. And then we're just kind of like just running rough numbers of, okay, well, if you found someone to do it, you said, hey, I own the land, you take the time, we have $1,000 potential, you take 500, you give me 500, and we'll call it good. That's still 3,500 a season cash, not included on here. And that's with somebody else doing it for you, essentially. I don't know, maybe you could come up with a better situation than that, but that was kind of the rough numbers we used. So he's looking at this and thinking, okay, yeah, this is pretty good. Then he goes, he's got a home with a ton of equity in it. So we're waiting for the seller to make up their mind. And in the process, finds out that he could actually do a HELOC on his house and pay this off in cash. But then the expenses, then the 500 is coming essentially from the equity from his house, which is going to cost 625. Well, now that's a more intriguing number. And, essentially that is the direction it's looking like he's going to go. And we did get that one under contract. Okay. Oh, this is where I got the bonus. Rough estimate, 20 spots, 7,000 season potential. Okay. So then I wanted to kind of run this the same way. So like, to me, like my deal, I still don't, the one I've got in, you might disagree, but the one I got on Harriet Street, I consider that like, that's a triple. It's not a home run, but it's a triple. It's a very good deal. It's better than a base hit, certainly. To me, this one's a double. This is a good, for this person's a first-time investor. This is a really good opportunity, in my opinion. So again, the simple option is just the improved cash flow, and that's how it works out, in terms of the improved cash flow. Okay, so then sell for profit. Well, so we just went into the whole situation of like, if somebody else were to buy this, now we've got a turnkey, we've got the rents up to market. Plus there's some additional income that of course we would advertise. Would somebody be willing to put, a 35% down payment at 7% interest rate in order to get this property? Would it cash flow? That's at 575. So if you were to sell at 575, which is conservatively, I think that's where you can get closing costs, rehab, yada, yada, yada. The ROI is not as intriguing. Okay. Now, if I don't know, that might be pushing the limit a little bit, but now all of a sudden that's probably your best case scenario. Now you're at 24, which is more intriguing. That's the point of like, okay, maybe it would make sense to 1031 exchange, or maybe it would make sense to just take a profit for owning this property for 9 months, stabilizing it, reselling it. So then I went by the Burr method and said, okay, well, let's say we did this. So, again, probably 25% down, not 20% down. This is how much equity you have to keep. So this is keeping 68K in the deal instead of the initial down payment of going the wrong direction here, 175. How does that look? So this is with the appraisal of 575. So, you're basically at a little bit of a loss. Again, he plans to manage it himself, but it is, it's a possible option. And then of course, if it's the best case scenario of like, you get it up to 600, remember the city assessment right now is 580. So you'd like to think you could get an appraiser with stabilizing the rents up to around that 580 mark again. But again, now you're only keeping $50,000 in the deal. You still own the property, still get the benefits. you probably need to put keep a little bit more money in the deal to keep it in a positive cash flow with property management. So, but to me, I feel like this is still a really good opportunity, especially for a first time investor. Any questions on either one of these before I move on? Okay. All right. Okay, so, and then of course, remember the classics, which we've been talking about a little bit. The classic investors: buy, improve, and hold. Buy and hold doesn't make a lot of sense in this market, in my opinion. If you're buying turnkey, you're automatically having to put a higher down payment, and it's hard to make that a really intriguing investment. Of course, if you want like just the really safe thing, that might be the direction for some people. But buy, improve, and hold. Now you improve the property, you improve the rents, you've improved the equity, you've either improved the cash flow, you potentially have more options than just holding on to it. There's a lot of different things that you can do. And then of course the BRRRR. If you can buy something that makes so much sense that you can actually get it to a place where you can pull some equity back out, still own the property, that might make a lot of sense to do. And then, I won't talk about this too much, but there's still classic strategies for homeowners. You can do a live and flip. Right now, if I took a buyer out right now, and was helping to buy a single family house, most likely, unless it's like a really hard to get into neighborhood, or unless it's, super renovated, alter move-in ready, which still seems to be attracting competition. For the most part, we're probably getting the house at around the asking price. If we're paying above, it's probably not by much, and potentially we're paying below asking or getting closing costs or whatever. If you buy kind of average house in a good neighborhood and start over time improving the property while you're living in it, you're building a good amount of equity. And then of course, converting your current house into a rental. I've helped several clients do that in the last year, where it's like, hey, you bought this place at a good price. You refinanced when rates were in the low 3s or maybe even under 3. Why don't you just keep it for a couple more years? Would you be willing to be a landlord for a couple of years on a property that very, very well? You lived in here for 2-3 years, and as long as they sell before they've been out for 3 years, they don't pay any capital gains on it, and they could choose to own it beyond that, and that's fine too. But I'm helping some people with that, where it's like, hey, here's the plan, and maybe in 2.5 years we're putting it on the market, or maybe in 2.5 years they're like, you know what, we're gonna let it ride, and maybe we'll do a 1031 exchange in a few more years, because you could. So if they do own it for more than 3 years, they can still avoid paying capital gains if they do a 1031 exchange. So now, in order for that to work, they have to have enough equity in the property that's an option, and not everybody has that as an option. And then of course, house hack. Somebody buys a 4-bedroom house, they rent out the other rooms to friends, family, coworkers, whatever. And essentially the other people who are living there are helping pay down the mortgage, and they are the ones getting most of the equity. So those are, the classic strategies for homeowners. And again, being a homeowner is real estate investing 101. And then, and these are just ways to step it up a notch for people who are in a situation that they could use one of these. So, any questions on any of those? All right. And then of course, I always tell people, like, you got to look at the whole picture. And I talked about this more in depth in the first one. And I'm not going to go nearly as in depth, but it's accessible. If you can get a loan, you can buy it. It's going to appreciate. It's going to go up in value. even if it doesn't go up in value every year, you can't look there. It's very rare to look at a particular time period and be like, oh, the property didn't go up during this time period. If you look over any medium to long span, your property was going to go up in value. Leverageable, you own the whole property, but you only had to put a 5, 10, or 20% down payment. That's pretty powerful. You can't do that in the stock market. You can't own, you can't put a 10% down payment on Apple stock and own all of the stock. You have to buy the whole thing. But on property, you can do that. It's rentable, so you can have cash flow. It's improvable, so that you can get improve the equity. You have the tax benefits of being able to deduct, depreciate, or defer. It's pretty stable. I don't know about the people in this room, but my stocks lost almost half its value this year. I guarantee you, even when the real estate market was at its worst, I didn't lose half my value in 1 year. Actually, even over that 4-year span, I didn't lose half my value. But in the stock market, that can definitely happen. So it's definitely a benefit of real estate investing. And of course, it's livable. In a worst case, it can provide shelter. So if it's a rental property, in a worst case scenario, you could move into it if you absolutely had to. I talk about this more in some of my other ones, but it's worth touching on. Early on, I wish I would have, on my first deal, I didn't hire an agent. It's part of the reason it took so long. If you're not working, if you aren't an agent, work with an agent. It'll substantially improve your progress. And then if you are willing to house hack, which can come in two forms, it could be buy a house, rent out the rooms. It could be buy a duplex, rent out the other side. I'd highly encourage that. I've helped some people do that. As time goes on, know when to hire help, think about your dollar per hour. And then at all times, make the offer, be educated, and don't hesitate. There's a lot of good deals I've missed out on the last few years because I sat in front of a spreadsheet too long. And 5 days later, they already had an accepted offer. So if you hear about something like that's like the one on East Harriet, I spent 1 hour putting that on a spreadsheet. I had an offer to them in under 24 hours because I was like, I'm so sick of missing out on stuff. I'm just going to do it. And I just had enough, my gut was telling me this makes a lot of sense, even though on a spreadsheet, it didn't hit all my old criteria, but that's where I was like, I got to rethink this. Be educated, know your options. Oh, and don't hesitate. I already mentioned that. Then just insider tips, like, there's no smoking gun. There's no like perfect way to do it. And then of course the famous phrase, don't wait to buy real estate and wait. There's a lot of benefits to real estate. Have an open mind. There's no perfect deal. Be prepared. If you're thinking about getting into other things, I think it's better to be an expert in one thing than to be a jack of all trades. So like, I don't wholesale, I don't flip, like that's not my thing. I buy and hold, buy, improve and hold. I understand that really well. I have some friends who are very, very good at flipping. I wouldn't try to dive into that space, but some people are like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. You can almost do too much. And then of course, the biggest thing is take action. Eventually have to do something or you'll become the observer. So action steps for first-time investors. The first thing is interview and hire a real estate agent or team with experience. Ideally, somebody who has done it in the past and can share what they know. Talk to a lender. Start talking about options because you can go. Some people are more comfortable going with a conventional financing and getting a fixed rate for 15 or 30 years. Other people are very comfortable with going with commercial financing options. And, one of the things you can do with commercial financing is you can put it into an LLC rather than your personal name. So it just depends on what your what you're wanting, what you're comfortable with, kind of what your goals are. Get on an MLS search that with properties that fit your price range. Start analyzing properties on a spreadsheet like I've done. It could be like that, or it could be a different one. If you want a copy of mine, all you have to do is email me, and I'll just send you this, it's just like a Google link, and I just say, hey, all you have to do is save copy, and then you can do whatever you want to it. And then the thing I always say is, hey, these first 4 steps don't cost anything. It doesn't cost you anything to talk to an agent. It doesn't cost you anything to talk to a lender. It doesn't cost anything to get on an MLS search. And doesn't cost anything to start looking at things on a spreadsheet. Okay, so recommended books and resources. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I talked a lot about these a lot more, I think in my first class, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I've got right here, is like a really inspirational, motivational book. It really kind of puts you in the right mindset for real estate investing. And then also Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. That's one of my favorites. It's definitely a drier read, but there's like tons of good information on there. It's just like, especially for agents, in my opinion. And the Bigger Pockets podcast. So if you're not already listening to the Bigger Pockets podcasts, I'd highly recommend. I probably listen to anywhere between 3 to 5 of them a week. They're about an hour long, and you could just listen to it to and from work or whatever. And that's the book I have here. So Brandon Turner is one of the leaders of the Bigger Pockets. He's got his book on rental property investing, which I've got right here. That'll be another one that we'll drop. And then the One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. That's just like on focus. It's actually a good book for really anything: investing, personal life, business, whatever it might be. Great book. So yeah, it's just your feedback. Any questions, anything else that you'd like to know? We've still got a little bit of time left for anything else.
Seriously, when you, at what point would you sell a property as opposed to just adding a property to your portfolio? Like, what are you weighing when you decide, like, it's running sports, or I can't see adding more value? Is that where you, cash flow enough and I need this money in order to buy an 8 unit as opposed to 4? Or like, can you just talk about like how you choose to sell one of your properties?
Yeah, so there's one that I'm like really tempted to sell. Like I actually was planning to sell it 2 years ago, and then like literally right as I was planning to reach out to my property manager, say, hey, I want to start connecting with some of the tenants, and doing like the kind of the odd jobs to kind of spruce up the units a little bit. But then the deck, we learned, was dry rotted and was going to have to get replaced, and this was at the peak of lumber expense, and so I had to replace a large deck at the peak of, and so it took forever for it to happen. It was very expensive. And by the time it happened, we were in the fall, and I was just like, I'd rather, wait until spring. And then of course this spring with everything that was going on, I was so busy, I didn't even have time to think about selling it. But yeah, that one in particular is just because, most of the value was the appreciation. It's a great location. It's 3 blocks from the Capitol. It's like a block from the Monona bike loop. And but yeah, as far as like equity I have in it and cash flow from the equity, it's like not super intriguing. I've done to it what I needed to do to it, but it's a very attractive location. I know there'd be a lot of interest. But yeah, and now I'm not sure. That's the first one I would probably 1031 exchange. But yeah, in hindsight, almost every property I owned, after, because initially I want to improve that property. It's like I want to do a better job than the last person, so I'm investing money in it that the last person didn't. In hindsight, almost every property I ever owned, I probably could have or should have put it back on the market 1 to 2 years later, and then look to exchange it up. The thing is it's so hard to find the next property to exchange up. And to me, I don't want to just sell it because now I miss out on all those other benefits. But yeah, if there was, if there was ample, 8 to 16 unit apartments, available, I would probably, all of my 2 and 3 units, I'd probably be trading up as we speak. But I think that's probably the hardest, is my deal flow isn't as good as I'd like it to be. So I keep finding the stuff that I'd prefer to, but I've gotten really comfortable with that space, so that's the good news. It's like, okay, well, buying a 2 to 4 unit and putting money into it and making it worth a lot more. I've done that a lot of times. Now I just like to do that at slightly larger, buildings, more like 6 to 16 unit would be the ideal. So. But yeah.
Do you keep multiple properties in an LLC, or do you keep kind of like a parent holding for each individual and then break them out into each property as its own entity?
Yeah. So when I first started getting into this, the attorney I was working with at the time advised me that I should put one in each. For accounting purposes, that made things a lot easier because, you have a checkbook for each one. You've got a credit card or debit card for each one. So it's very easy to keep track of the expenses that way. However, if I did it all over again, knowing the direction that things are going, like I would clump like group properties together. So like all of my downtown 2 and 3 units, I probably would just put under one LLC. But, I've got an 8 unit in Cross Plains and an 8 unit on the west side of Madison. Would I put those under the same? Probably not. But yeah, if I had a few in the same location, similar type. But when I first started, I expected, I was just trying to replace my teaching salary when I first started. So I was just like, oh, okay, if I get up to 6 or 7 of these, and that was all I was thinking at the time. So, but yeah, any other questions or? Yeah.
Do you find a lot of your deals on the MLS?
Yeah, I talked about that a little bit more on the last one. It's a combination. I think there's going to be more deals out there on the MLS in the next 12 months than there have been. You just have to be able to know how to look at it and break it down. But there's off market. All the ones that I was just talking about right there, like those were all off market. But with agents, like that's just like talking to agents that I know do investment real estate. So, and they're just like, oh yeah, I've got a seller that like to sell, but they're looking for this type of transaction. Okay. I might have that type of buyer. Let's see if we can work something out. And, that's sometimes how those come together. So, but yeah. And then like the one, it would have hit the market. It was in delayed status. So agents know, like, if you peek into that every once in a while, you can just kind of see what's coming up. And ultimately I was like, I think the one across the street just sold for like 400,000 and they're going to list it, 375. Call the agent up and she seemed not very confident even with that price. And in her mind, she was thinking 375 to her, not to the seller, but to her would feel like an above ask offer. I was like, oh, well, hey, I think we can probably get this off the market before it hits at the asking price. We don't even have to go above. And he ran the numbers and he was like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And we move forward with that. So, yeah.
Do you like investing in 2-bedroom, 1 bath? Let's say 4 plexes or 8 plexes, or let's say 3-bed, 2-bath, 2 baths?
So, yeah, I guess it depends on the location. So like downtown, so like I said, I had that 4-bed, 2-bath house. And then when I traded it, I went into 2 buildings that were both 2 units of 3-bed, 1 bath. So I went up to 4 units of 3-bed, 1 bath in downtown Madison. And I found it was really hard to fill 4 units of the same exact thing, especially because most people that are looking to move like further off from campus, like opposite side of the Capitol from campus, that, typically they want to share with one person, not two other people. And the bigger you get, the harder it is to rent it out. So, but that's not saying I wouldn't buy them, but yeah, I think two bed. I mean, the thing, the smaller the bedroom count, the easier it is to rent. But the smaller the bedroom count, the quicker the turnover is. So the sweet spot probably is 2 bed. But because if you have a 1 bed or an efficiency, like this person's like coming in, they're going to rent this spot, and they're doing it for the flexibility. So they might get a job in another city, or who knows what, or they start to get more serious with a significant other, and now they don't need the apartment anymore. So I feel like 1 bed and efficiencies have more turnover, but they're easier to fill. Larger units are harder to fill, but it depends. Like if you're renting out like a 4 bed, I've got, like I said, I've got clients that rent out the house that they used to live in. And even though they moved to another house, so, you're renting a 3 bed, 2 bath house, you might be renting to a family, and then that's going to be pretty stable, especially if you're like relatively close to a school. They might stick around for years. You might not have to do anything. So, but yeah, I would say that's why I would have to, like, in general, the smaller you go, the faster your turnover is going to be. The bigger you go, the less turnover, but the more difficult it might be to rent. But it just depends.